to another episode of Halftimes and Harmonies, where I talk about everything athletics and the arts. And this week I wanted to do a nice recap of this intriguing March Madness tournament that we've had. Lord have mercy, it has been an absolute crazy tournament, both on the men and women's side. So because of the fact that both sides have been absolutely insane, I will definitely be doing a two-parter. So this first part will be going over the men, and then later this week I will be going over the women and their tournament. So for both, I wanted to go through some surprises, some things that were expected, and give a preview of the Final Four. So starting with some surprises from the men's tournament, we've obviously had our Cinderellas, as everyone does. Princeton making it to the Sweet 16 and being the third straight 15 seed to make it to the Sweet 16. That's absolutely insane and absolutely amazing, and provided a lot of madness and busted a lot of people's brackets, because I know a lot of people probably chose Arizona to go pretty far in the tournament, but they got doused in the first round. It's fun. Also, we had Fairleigh Dickinson. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. Not entirely sure. They also busted a bunch of people's brackets by beating Purdue. Yeah, and then Kansas getting knocked out by Arkansas. That was definitely another bracket buster. Who people probably had Kansas going pretty far. And I think Alabama getting knocked out as well. And really all the number one seeds getting knocked out. So we also have some people doing better than we had expected them to, which I'll go over later in my Final Four preview. Now, okay, the one thing that's expected, and honestly, I think a lot of people might not think that this was expected, but for me, in my opinion, I think this was probably the most expected thing, was all the number one seeds not making it to the Elite Eight. Now, that's a statistic that has literally never been done before, but if you watched any sort of college basketball this year, you'd see that the parity was probably there's probably been the best parity in college basketball that there has ever been. And you started to see a little bit of it last year, but ultimately we still had a number one seed win. But I think this year was even more so because every team had some sort of fatal flaw that ultimately kind of led to their demise. And every number one team got exposed. I don't think the committee got it wrong or anything like that. Every team earned their spot and earned their seeding and ranking and whatever. But I ultimately don't think that those numbers were really a deciding factor in some things. So I genuinely think that, seeding was right, but it's closer than it's been in a lot of years, and that obviously proved true with all number one seeds being out before the Elite Eight. But that also kind of leads me to my Final Four preview. But before I go to that, of course, I got to give a nice little shout out to our TCU Horned Frog basketball team. They gave it their all, and honestly, I think what plagued us in the end was shooting ourselves in the foot once again, and that's kind of why we're 60 in the first place, and why we why we lost as well, was because we just shot ourselves in the foot. Injuries. It was a weird year, but glad of what they did and what they accomplished. So always proud of the Horned Frog boys. Hopefully we'll be back next year and doing big things and great things as well. So that's good. But now on to our Final Four preview of a Final Four that literally I could not have told you would exist at the beginning of the year. So starting with FAU, our Cinderella, number 9 seed. Um, they've been surprising. They've had an interesting little trajectory getting to the Final Four, beating the likes of Tennessee and some others. I think they also beat Fairleigh Dickinson. They had an easier route because they didn't have to go through Purdue. But they did not to mention they did beat some pretty tough teams. So good for them. Glad they made it through, and we'll see how far they make it. And they will be facing San Diego State, who I got to see a little bit of play in their Mountain West Championship game. They are making history as this is their first time in the Final Four, but it's also the first time a Mountain West team is in the Final Four. So congrats to them. They absolutely have been playing fantastic and have beaten some pretty tough opponents like Alabama, and they had to beat Creighton. They beat Creighton by 1 point, which was an exciting finish to that game. So good for them. And then also we have UConn, who is the highest seed in the tournament remaining, which is weird because they're a 4 seed, but they've been absolutely dominant in their performances and have won by a margin of like 20 points every single time. So they've been absolutely dominating this entire tournament. So good for them. And I think they're my pick to win it all. But they will be facing Miami, which I know my mom is going to be super, super excited about because she is a Miami alum. And they've beat some pretty tough opponents as well to get to where they are. And congrats to them. They've been doing really, really well. And I think it's really ironic that they had to beat Houston and Texas to make it to Houston, Texas. Okay, guys, humor me on that one a little bit. That's kind of funny. But good for them. And congrats to all 4 teams. And I do think that my champ pick would be UConn winning it all, and they're going to be playing San Diego State. It's a weird year, and honestly, the madness has been insane and just crazier than ever, because this is the reason they call it March Madness, is because of the fact that there's so much crazy that happens. But usually the crazy only lasts maybe to the Sweet 16. It does not last all the way to the Final Four. And so I guess this is it. This is the final piece of craziness. If you told me that FAU and San Diego State would be San Diego State, they would be playing for a national title, I'd be like, okay, that's weird. That's weird. Nope, that doesn't exist. But yeah, it's been an interesting tournament, and so that's my take on the men. So stay tuned to Thursday's podcast because I will be releasing my thoughts on the women's side of things because they have had an interesting tournament as well. So to all that, I want to say au revoir, ciao, goodbye, and goodbye.